Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where in the world you're joining us from. This show was supposed to be anchored by my friend Ashwin Ravikumar. Unfortunately, due to certain unforeseen circumstances, he could not join us. So I'm your host, Nalin Channa, and I welcome you all to the 57th episode of TLR Shows. TLR Shows is a flagship series of live stream shows brought to you by TLR Now. TLR Now is a niche, one stop learning and development, coaching, training, and mentoring organization catering to corporates, educational institutions, and not for profits. TLR Now, headquartered in Pune, India, has presence across the subcontinent, Middle East, and the United States of America. On TLR shows, we have had guests from various different backgrounds in the last 9 months that we have been organizing these shows now. We have had entrepreneurs, coaches, trainers, speakers, relationship experts, people from the art and culture streams, theater, musicians, media houses, business houses, educationists, lawyers, doctors, etc. TLR Shows is one place where you meet amazing people who share their expertise to transform lives and keep upgrading lives to ensure a brighter future for all. Today, we have a very special guest on our show, Dr. Sunila Kawatra. Dr. Sunila, an MBBS degree holder with a diploma in food and nutrition from Bhopal. She is a practicing nutritionist. She is a firm believer that the right balance between appropriate food and lifestyle can solve many of our health problems, including social challenges that we may face. She is also associated with Sahayata, an NGO based in West Bengal, India, which supports the underprivileged through counseling and by providing free meals to infants, children, adolescent girls, pregnant, and lactating mothers. That's really awesome. Welcome to the show, Dr. Sunila.
Thank you so much, Nalin, for having me here with you all.
Thank you. Thank you for coming over. We are extremely delighted to have you here, Dr. Sunila. To get started, I mean, we've got a theme on adolescent nutrition today. So just to get started, we would like to know first, before we get on to our main subject, we would like to know more about you, your student life, your profession, and the journey so far.
Well, you've already introduced me and you've very briefly told that I am actually a doctor by profession. So, and after finishing my MBBS, I was working for a couple of years and then marriage, kids, moving to Muscat, Oman. Many things happened where I had to take a break from my career. Now, when it was time for me to come back into the career and start pursuing it again, I wondered, there are two ways to approach an illness or ailment. One is you treat the existing disease, which is what doctors do. The other could be
Right.
preventive, where you adopt certain measures, bring about certain changes in yourself such that the disease is either prevented, it doesn't happen at all, or at least the
Right.
onset is delayed, or its severity is reduced. So basically, making the right food choices and modifying your lifestyle can immensely help in preventing these kind of non-communicable lifestyle-induced diseases. And you may be
True.
surprised to know that 2 out of every 3 deaths in the world nowadays is because of these illnesses, such as
Oh my
hypertension
God.
or high cholesterol, diabetes, cancer, and even cancer now is related to lifestyle and the way you live your life, whether it's eating your food, exercise regime, stuff like that. So if there is something that we can do to modify such things, the longevity is definitely prolonged and you lead a better, healthier life. So that is what brought
Absolutely.
me towards food and nutrition, wherein I started with a diploma course. And believe
Hmm.
me, when I delved deeper into the subject, there were so many things I learned, I understood that even as a doctor, we are not taught as part of our MBBS course or maybe
Right.
later on as
Right.
postgraduate. So right now I'm doing my post graduation. I'm pursuing my MSc in the same field, and I'm already
Awesome.
practicing as a nutritionist and a lifestyle consultant.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah. That's so surprising to hear that so many deaths happen. I mean, and it is we all know what is right for us, but we really don't do that. So I think that's a really shocking statistic that so many people die because of just nutrition issues, right?
Yes, absolutely. I would like to cite an example at this point of time. As children, we all go to school, and over the weekend, we are generally given certain tasks to be completed and brought on the first day of the week, whether it's a Monday or a Sunday,
Right,
depending on which part of the world you are in. And we all know
right.
that the homework has to be completed. Yet, it's only a couple of hours before the weekend is ending that the child will sit down to finish it because he or she
True,
knows that it is going to be corrected by the teacher next day. So it's the same
true,
work,
true.
same psychology that works with us when we are dealing in terms of lifestyle changes or dietary habits. We all know what is right,
Hmm.
what is wrong. Yet, only when we are answerable to someone, when we hire a professional who's going to ask you, "What did you eat today?" and this is what was, guided, and you did not follow it, that we come to the realization that this is not the way that we should be doing it, and we begin to
Hmm.
follow in the correct footsteps. So,
Yeah, right. So it's more of an accountability partner that
yes,
a nutritionist really is, because yeah, we know what is good for us, but I think that accountability doesn't come in until we go to the nutritionist.
that's correct.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah. So, Dr. Sunila, being a nutrition expert, how do you see the right diet having an impact on various age groups? Because I understand, I mean, I am a finance professional and probably don't know much about the finer details, but being in various age groups, I think the diet requirements are completely different as we speak about childhood, adulthood, and then as we grow older. So, would you tell us about the impact on various age groups that the diet has?
Sure. So basically, human life from beginning till end, from a nutritional point of view, is divided into 7 stages. So to sum it up
Right.
very briefly, you will have the fetal life where the baby is inside the mother's womb. Then we have the
Hmm.
infancy, which is the first year of life. Then we have number three, childhood, which can be early, middle, and late. Then we have the adolescence, which is our topic for today. Again, it can be early,
Right.
middle, and late, followed by adulthood, middle age, and then the geriatric age group, which is the old age. So when
Right.
it comes to the nutritional requirement, there are many factors that influence what an individual will need. So of course, in the fetal life, it's more of what the mother eats that is going to affect the growing baby. Um, and it's common knowledge that mothers are given iron, calcium, and zinc supplements, folate supplements, and they're advised to have an additional meal. The calorie requirement is higher. So if the mother's nutrition is sound, obviously the baby will grow well. If there is a gap there, it affects the baby in ways more than one. There could be intrauterine growth retardation. There could be neural tube defects. A baby could be born premature or with a lower IQ. The mother's habits, excessive alcohol consumption, smoking, in addition to what the food she's consuming. So all those have an effect on the baby. When we come to
Right.
infants, that's the 1 year that's really critical in terms of development, and that's the fastest growth of development is witnessed in this first year of life. As you know, then the baby is born, and then they start moving, they start sitting up, crawling, and then they finally start walking. Along with that, there is speech development. So the importance of nutrition at this stage cannot be overemphasized. Then comes
Right.
the
Right.
when the children will, slowly progress towards the school, kindergarten, primary stages, and again, the nutrition plays an important role because this is when they have the first exposure to the outside world. So they need to have a strong immune system, to the ability to fight illnesses. Should they fall ill, there should be an adequate store so that they can recover from it and the growth is not affected. Then comes the most critical and unfortunately the least researched stage of life, which is adolescence. I guess the reason probably is that people feel that the children are already grown up enough to understand, and they should be the ones who
Mm.
should be thinking on their own. So the parents or the caregivers tend to withdraw a little support, and this is also the stage when the children tend to get a bit moody and picky. So the nutrition can really go haywire, and this is also the time when the gender differentiation sets in. So depending on whether the a child is a boy or a girl, the nutrition needs are different, and so on. Then comes the adulthood and middle age when the growth is complete, yet you need adequate nutrition for regeneration. So whatever tissues are being, uh, the tissues or the cells that die, they have to be replaced with fresh cells, and
Right.
basically the body has to function properly. And the last is geriatric stage or the old age. Again, this is another important stage when nutrition plays an important role. The reason being that slowly the body's ability to digest and absorb the nutrients. You may be eating excellent food and balanced meals, and yet you may not be able to get the best out of it. So, how the food has to be prepared, in what combinations the food has to be served, quantities, timings, everything is important. So, at every stage of life, what goes into your system, in what quantity, how the meals should be balanced, it's extremely important. Nutrition from the beginning till the end, it's the fuel of your life. You cannot overlook it.
Right. 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 Yeah. So if I understand correctly, I mean, even though balanced diet is a requirement for each of the age groups, but I think the food components should essentially be completely different, I think.
No, actually,
Yeah.
the food components remain the same. So, our
Hmm.
aim, whether it's an infant or a child, adolescent, adult, old person, the plate still has to have all the five food groups. Technically speaking,
Hmm.
carbs, proteins, fats, fiber, which is from the fruits and vegetables, and of course, water. So, all the five food
Right.
groups should be present. If I translate it to real food, it comes to a grain which can be in the form of wheat, rice, or more locally available millets such as corn. You have the maize flour or bajra, ragi. Then you have a
Right.
protein source, which could depend whether if you're a vegetarian, non-vegetarian. So lentils, sprouts, fish, egg, meat, those kind of things. The fat, the good fats
Right.
coming from
Right.
the nuts and unrefined oil, fruits and vegetables, of course, depending on the season, and water. 70% of human
Hmm.
body is water, so you need to stay hydrated.
Absolutely.
But what changes
Absolutely.
with each age group is the proportion. So the
Hmm.
first
Hmm.
concept that we teach a client when they come to our clinic is the art of plating all five food groups in every meal. So the food groups should not be missing at every meal, whether it's a
Right.
snack or whether it's a main meal, your breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You should try and include foods from all the five groups, and that is what composes a balanced meal. Of course, the proportion of the nutrients can vary depending on age and specific requirement. Uh, there is a
Right.
difference in gender, difference in the level of activity. So you may have a 25-year-old male, but a person who is essentially into office work and sedentary job will not have the same requirement as a person who is actively participating in athletic activities. So
Right.
the kind of the profession that you follow, the activity level that you have, your gender, your age, your build, everything affects the nutrients that you're going to consume. So what I recommend is
Absolutely.
that irrespective of the age group, uh, probably at least for a week or maybe a month, it's advisable to understand your body with a professional and get a menu designed for yourself. So if you're not able to do it on your own, that is.
Right. 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 Awesome. Dr. Sunila, you just touched upon that for adolescents, normally the parents feel that now they are on their own and they don't are not that much watchful on the diets. I think it is also because in the childhood we've kind of being so much micromanage them that probably the adolescents also feel that they should get away and do what they want. So is it right to say that parents play an extremely vital role in our food habits inculcated during childhood? And if yes, what would you advise parents watching our show today to be particularly aware about food habits during childhood so that during adolescence, children kind of carry on the right way?
I think the parents play a pivotal role, not just during childhood. It's throughout the life of a person. When you are with your parent, their food habits are what is going to, affect the child's food habit, irrespective of the age group.
True.
Because children
True.
naturally learn more by observation rather than by lecture.
Mm.
So if you have a parent
Mm.
who's extremely picky in their food habits, or if they come from a household that has a very restrictive menu being made on a regular basis, obviously the food choices of the child are also going to be limited. A. B. What is more important is not what the food is cooked, the environment in which it is served or consumed. So, if, for example, I would like to say, when the food is served on the table, if there is a member of the family who's always finding faults, today the salt is less, the spice level is too high, and this is what I wanted to eat, and this is not what you have made, or what you have made, if the other person makes it, it turns out better. So, if there is a certain kind of negativity around the food that is created, there is a child sitting next to you who's passively absorbing all of that. The second thing that most people nowadays do is have the dining table in the TV room. So most people, they like to have their meal alongside the favorite show when it is going on. So there is a twofold damage that happens that time. One thing is you're not putting your mind into your food. You really don't know what you're consuming and how much you're eating, because all of the focus is on the TV as to what the show is
Right.
showing and what's going on and things like that. And the secondly is it's proven now, this is not research, it's proven and it has made way into medical books that blue light actually interferes with micronutrient absorption, whether it is calcium, iron, and zinc. And all three micronutrients are so important at every stage of life, whether it's your bone health, whether it's your
Right.
hemostasis, that's the blood formation, or whether it is your neural health, intellect. So, that's a double fold damage. Now,
True.
contrast this to a family who sits at the table with a feeling of gratitude. Thank God I have a full meal at my table to fuel myself, to satisfy my hunger, and I'm not amongst those underprivileged ones who don't even have enough food to fill
Correct.
themselves up. So, again,
True.
the food automatically assumes a very positive vibe to it, and the child who's sitting next to you will feel that, even if he or she is not able to express it in so many words, they are subconsciously absorbing that this is something I need to respect and I need to be thankful for, that it is there on the table.
Correct.
So the food obviously has a multifold effect on the body. It's going to affect your state of happiness, and when you are happy, automatically the food is absorbed better. It you are able to get more out of what you are eating. So I feel the
Correct. Correct.
parents can really influence the child's not only the food habits but their whole attitude towards food, and of course the choices that they make in terms of menu. If there is a variety that is being served in the uh, household, and there is a lot of emphasis on grocery shopping, the parents make the child participate in picking fresh produce, seasonal vegetables
Right.
being included in the menu. All those things have such a
Mm.
positive impact on the child. So
Correct. Correct.
definitely, I when children come and parents bring children who have some kind of an issue with the food, it's the parents who need to be counseled more than the kids, I feel.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And I think you mentioned about the TV. I think it's also about the phones, which have become an integral kind of accessory along on the dining tables as well. And the notification that pop up get a priority over family time. So, which is also, I think we have to be all the more conscious of, because the conversation that we have with the family during meals is immensely important, I believe.
That's so important. What you're saying is absolutely correct.
Yeah. Yeah. So moving on from childhood to adolescence, is it, I mean, what is your key advice on the nutrition that we need during adolescence and as we gear up to enter into adulthood?
So, what I would like to say is, during adolescence, the nutritional objective should be the food should provide adequate support for the physical development, the neurocognitive development, right? And the second thing is that it should provide stores for any illnesses. And the third thing is that it should prepare the child for adulthood. In saying so, what I mean is that this is also the time when the children go through a phase of sexual maturity. So, if the food is not proper, for example, if I may say, as of now, we see a lot of girls coming up with PCOS. This condition was not so, common maybe a decade or 2 decades ago. So suddenly, why has this issue come up? And this is all because of the food that is being consumed by the children or not consumed rather. So these issues are coming up, and that is what the focus on adolescent nutrition should be. Second thing is realizing the difference between the gender. So most people say that boys need more food and the girls do not need as much. Uh, to a certain extent, it is true, because the male body is such that the lean muscle mass is so much more. So if I compare a 10-year-old boy to a 15-year-old boy, with normal activity levels, the calorie requirement, the difference is almost 400 to 500 calories. Whereas in the similar age
Okay.
group, the girls may need only maybe 200 to 250 calories more. But what happens
Okay.
is that the micronutrient requirement for the girls is much higher than what the boys will need. This is because of the monthly loss that they go through during the period cycle.
Right.
Secondly, this is also the time when the girls start depositing fat and start storing nutrients for a probable future pregnancy and lactation. Uh, you
Okay.
see, when a girl is pregnant, the fetus acts as a parasite. So, whether or not the mother is consuming proper diet at that time, the fetus will anyway take away the nutrient from the mother's body.
True.
So, if the
True.
stores
True.
are not adequately built during adolescence, the outcome of the pregnancy may also get affected. So, whether it is a boy or it is a girl, the nutrition has to be paid adequate attention to, and both boys and girls need, they have their own specific needs which need to be satisfied with the food that they eat.
Right. Right. Wonderful. So Neela, when it comes to good habits, I mean, we see that our lifestyles today as professionals, as adults, we are also feeling that it's a fast lane life that we are living in. And all the more it is for adolescents as well, the kind of distractions, so to speak, or the kind of activities that they are doing. So when it comes to good habits, what key thing or things that matter that you see that the generation today, the lovely generation of today, is not taking care and they should be taken care of?
I don't know if it's completely in their hands to uh, take care of the food that they are eating. As you mentioned, the fast pace of life. What usually happens during the morning hours in most households, for example, the children have to go to school. They may wake up late, and there may not be enough time for them to have a proper breakfast. So. Packing a proper lunch for the child to have it during the snack hour is again the responsibility of the caregiver, not so much of the child. So even if he or she
Yep.
has only
Yep.
time to gulp down a glass of milk, that should be fine. But then, what I would like to emphasize is on planning. There is a famous quote in the financial world. So when you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So that
Absolutely.
works in terms of nutrition as well. If the life is too fast paced, both the parents are working, and there isn't enough time to pay attention to food during the or meal preparation during the week, I think it's over the weekends that we can prepare the meals. So whether it's grocery shopping, planning the menu for the week, cutting, chopping, and keeping the vegetables ready in the refrigerator, there is a certain way of doing things. There is a certain way of storing those cut vegetables so that you don't lose out on nutrition. And then using those, whatever you have prepared over the weekend to prepare healthy meals and snacks throughout the week. So I wouldn't really, tell the children to modify their habits so much. So if there is a healthy and a tasty snack that they are already carrying with them, it will keep them away from junk. And once in a while, if they are indulging in a vada pav or a pizza, I don't
Yeah.
think there is much of an issue with that. But if the support
Absolutely.
from the family is not there, If the communication between the parent and the child is not there, the bonding is not there, there is really nothing that can be done to modify a child's behavior. That has to come from
Right.
within a child, and that will come only when there has been a smooth transition from childhood to adolescence to adulthood, where the parent leads by example. They follow a healthy eating plan, they exercise regularly, and they communicate with the child at every stage of life. Again, everything is interrelated. You come back to your meal time, like you said, you are distracted with a phone call. That's the time you are used to catch up on your friend, and your child is desperately trying to tell you what happened during the day. So it may not be of any significance to you, but it has been very important to the child. So if you spend
Correct.
time bonding with the kids at that hour, later on when you are telling them about healthy living, is when they will also tend to absorb and listen to you. So
Correct.
I wouldn't really emphasize on any of the habits, but yeah,
Yep.
for parents in general, the trend is also catching up. So the following the circadian rhythm, tuning your eating habits to your biological, natural biological rhythm is what is catching up. So you may have lifestyle gurus on one hand telling you do intermittent fasting, don't eat for 12 hours, 16 hours, and you may have another lifestyle guru telling you eat every 2 hours. So you have to figure out
Yeah.
what is best for you. There may be four members in the family, each with their own rhythm. So never force feed a child. Just because you like to have a hearty breakfast doesn't mean the child will also want to have that. So they know how
Right.
much they need. They know what their hunger is. Let them develop that responsibility towards their body. Let them develop that understanding of when their body needs fueling and what kind of food they want to give it.
Correct. 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 Wonderful. We have an audience question, Sunila. Kirti Gupta wants to know how much impact do fast foods have on the adolescent development? Thank you,
It
Kirti.
actually depends on the fast food that the child is consuming and the source that it is coming from. So, pizza generally, for example, is considered a fast food, but it can be really made into a healthy and wholesome meal if it is cooked at home. So, if you, for example, starting with the base, if you get it from the store, it will be refined flour and loads of yeast, preservatives, salt, and fat added to it. The same base can be prepared using whole wheat flour, much less fat at home. Then comes the sauce. Again, a store bought sauce will have ample amount of preservatives and salt in it, which by the way also act as precursors or create the environment in the body to it's a precancerous condition in the body when you are eating too much of preservatives. So when you are buying products, I'm sorry, I'm just deviating from the topic just a little bit. So when you're buying products off the shelf, check for E numbers. If the label has a lot of E numbers mentioned on it, that means it is high on preservatives and you should stay away from them. So contrast to this, if you use, for example, now winters, you're getting fresh tomatoes. If you're preparing the sauce at home and using it as a flavoring for the pizza, I think there is nothing better than that. It's almost the same as preparing a masala for rajma that the child does not want to eat. So you have a roti, you have some vegetables, you can add capsicum to it, you can add parsley to it, and because it's presented in the form that the child likes, it will be accepted better. And then you follow it with the vegetables of your choice and a small helping of cheese. So a fast
Right.
food or a junk food like pizza can also be made nourishing, can be made healthy, can be made appealing to the kid, and they can be made to eat it. So necessarily you need not follow the conventional dal roti chawal sabji pattern for all kids. You can
Right.
incorporate interesting fun menus for them also.
Right. Right. Thank you, Sunila. Thank you, Kirti. I think you've got your answer. I would encourage our audience members to keep on sending their questions. I'm happy to note that we've got audience members watching us across geographies, across all our social media handles. I've got another question from Alpa Shah. Is asking how important is it for adolescents to have fresh fruits daily and how to indulge them into eating it daily?
So, Alpa, I would like to say how important is it for you to breathe every day? So fruits and vegetables are, just as important. They are one of the main ingredient that should be there at every meal in one form or the other. So, however, if you have an adolescent who's not particularly fond of fruits, um, instead of just preparing something and giving it to them, what I feel is the first step is communication again. So, if you sit down with your child and try to figure out a fruit of choice, it could be anything. It could be a seasonal fruit. It could be something exotic like a berry, whatever, mango. So, whatever fruit the child likes should be given to him at a time when he or she wants to eat and in the form they want to have. So fortunately for adolescents, we recommend, we have a good margin for giving them proteins. So if they want to make it in the form of a smoothie with a nice yogurt, it's excellent for gut health also. Or you could combine it with milk. And because fruits are naturally sweet, you don't even need to add sugar to that. There are endless recipes available on the internet which are healthy, which give you the exact calorie count. So if you don't want to overload your kid with too many calories, there are healthier options available, and I mean they will be readily eating the fruit and as well as getting the full benefit out of it without any complaints or saying no to that. So it really doesn't matter what fruit it is, and gradually you can increase a variety of fruits that they eat. They may initially begin with only a couple of them, but as they develop the taste to smoothies or milkshakes, you could add a couple of other things to it and then later on tell the child that today your smoothie also had this fruit. How did you like it? And, you can develop on that.
Yeah, I think she's got a follow-up question, which I think it's a very kind of common question that people say that whether cut fruits are better or fresh fruit juices have the impact, because there is a belief that if you squeeze them out, the sugar content increases. So I think it would be good if you can give clarity to our audience on that.
I think so long as you have a good pair of dentures, the cut fruit is better. Unless and until you can't, juicing should be a strict no-no. At this point, I would just like to make a slight correction. The sugar content does not increase. The sugar content of the fruit remains the same. But since the fiber content reduces, the relative sugar content increases. When you're juicing the fruit, unless and until you are using a blender that really, extracts everything out of the fiber and puts it into the juice, and you don't need to strain it because the fiber is removed from the fruit. It's essentially the sugar in the form of juice that you are having. And people who are diabetic or who have insulin resistance, things like that, it could be adversely affecting their health. Rather than giving them the micronutrients they think they are consuming, it can cause an insulin spike as well. So fresh fruit juices, as far as possible, should be avoided. Cut fruit any day is much better.
Right. Okay, we have Kirti Gupta. She's happy at the answer she got on the junk food. She says, nice way to turn junk food into nutritionally viable food. So thank you, Sunila, for that. She's got a follow-up questions. What food should be avoided by adolescents?
I think, again, I would like to stress on the balance of the meal. So excess and too little, both extremes should be avoided. When I say of these things, I would like to point out the fat diets that are in vogue now. So you have the keto diet, wherein there is too much of fat that is being consumed and the carbs are absolutely cut out from the menu. So those kind of diets should be avoided. The reason being that each nutrient or each food group has its own specific function in the body. Cutting out a food group completely from the diet can have deleterious effects on the body. Coming back to keto, where you are inducing ketosis in the body, can lead to extreme acidic environments in the body, which again is pre-cancerous situation. They can trigger, if you are genetically inclined to cancer, they can trigger the formation of cancer cells. That how severe, keto diets can be harmful. The same is true for paleo or extremely restrictive diets, that tell you to completely cut down carbs and proteins and just have fruits and vegetables. So you had the GM diet doing rounds in the middle. So those kind of diets is something that should be avoided by adolescents. In fact, at any stage of life. So extremes of anything have to be avoided. Too much and too little. That can affect their linear growth, that can affect their sexual development, delay their puberty, and their performance later on in life, whether it is in terms of intellect, whether it's in terms of concentration, whether it is in terms of efficiency at work, everything can be compromised. So that's how important the food is in your life, and you should be very careful with what you consume.
Right, right. I think if you've got that answer, I'll by the time we have more questions from the audience, I'll just get back to where we were, Ms. Sunila. We were speaking about the fast-paced economic life and the hazards it brings to the nutrition side, where we kind of tend to ignore a lot of things, but which we should be doing. So, I mean, sometimes are there any ready things that we should be doing to handle such situations? I mean, obviously, willpower is something which is very important, that we should be conscious of what we are eating. But sometimes, if you don't have a choice, so are there any things that, especially people traveling, should they be carrying some stuff in their bags that if they don't get anything proper to eat, they can at least fulfill their dietary requirements?
I think homemade food any day, if a person is traveling, homemade food any day would be much better than carrying packaged food. So it depends on how many days the travel is going to last. So there is a very common thing that Gujaratis eat, which is called a thepla. So it's a long-lasting bread which is made out of whole wheat flour. It also has a considerable amount of fenugreek leaves. It has a little bit of salt. You can add sesame seeds to that. So it can become a complete meal by itself, because curd and yogurt is something you will get in any part of the world. So again,
Right.
like I said, if you hire a professional who can teach you how to balance your meals, probably a thing or two can be carried from home, and things that are readily available to the part of the world that you are traveling, those could be clubbed with the things that you have brought, and they can be made into a full meal, balanced meal. The second most
Right.
common thing that people carry with them is nuts. Now, I would like to put a word of caution here. There is no doubt that the nuts are extremely healthy. They are a good source of omega-3. They are, rich in the essential fatty acids, and they should be consumed. But then, how much to consume? There are many people who very make a loose statement and say, take a handful of nuts. Now, a handful of nuts may, accommodate, depending on the size of your fist, you may end up picking up 50 to 60 nuts. So if I take the example of an almond, which has 8 to 10 calories, you are actually consuming 400 to 500 calories in the form of nuts. So that is something that
Mm.
is not really healthy. So nuts
Right.
by themselves are healthy, but at point of time of day they are consumed, in what way they are consumed. For example, we all know that they should be soaked. Of course, you can't soak cashews, but almonds and walnuts should be soaked. There are specific reasons to that. That they have the phytic acid, which is an anti-nutritional substance, and they interfere with the
Right.
absorption of nutrients that we get from the nuts. So if somebody has, if your dietitian or your nutritionist has told you to consume a few nuts, then you're actually supposed to consume a few nuts. So it's 5 to 6 or 7 to 8, not really a fistful or handful of nuts. So something very
Right.
healthy can be made unhealthy by the way that you are consuming and the quantity you are consuming it in. So
Right.
apart from that, if I
Okay, we've
know
got
the
another. Yeah, good, good, good. Sorry.
apart from that, if I know the exact travel plans, I think I will be able to guide better.
I'll reach out to you next time. Travels are starting now. So we've got the next audience question. Charu Ganti, she wants to know, hi, for college going kids who are living away from parents and study till wee hours and often skip their breakfast, what can be suggested for them? Wonderful question, Charu. Sunila, your take.
Absolutely. Something that, all parents who have college going kids, they face this problem on a daily basis. So, one thing is that, if the child has this kind of a lifestyle where they are awake until wee hours in the morning, and that doesn't leave them much time to have a healthy breakfast before they go to college, you shouldn't be really fretting out on that, because at the end of the day, what counts is the net nutrients that is entering your body. Like I said, each person, each individual, each gender has their own biological clock. So just because one person has breakfast doesn't mean everybody in the world has to have a proper breakfast before they start for work. So if there isn't any time, carry a packed snack with you. If there is a canteen or a cafeteria in the college, probably you can send the menu to a professional who can have a look at it and give you some suggestions as to what choices you can make. There should be a variety in the food that you eat so that the child is motivated enough. So supposing they have a break at say 10 or 11, and if it's that time they want to go and have a snack or a main meal, there is absolutely no issue at all. There is no one size fits all kind of a regime anymore. Each person has to have a lot of introspect. You need to look at your own life from a third party perspective, understand what your requirements are, figure out what you are doing wrong, pen it down, communicate, narrow it down, try to write down what changes you would like to incorporate, how they can be incorporated, take help.
Right.
There's no problem
Right.
with that. And if it doesn't suit you in the routine that you follow, try to fit in wherever breaks you have. Okay, this is the time schedule I have, and this is the period where I will be having a break. The nearest cafeteria to my college or to my class will be this one. This is the menu that they serve. Again, it comes back to the same thing that you have to learn to plan. If you are serious about your food, if you are serious about your lifestyle, and if you genuinely want to bring about a change in yourself, then you have to work for it. If you're always going to do what you have
Absolutely.
always done, you're always going to get what you have always gotten. So there has to be an effort.
Yes.
There is no doubt about it. And take help. I mean, it's perfectly fine if you are not able to do it on your own. Take help.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think, as they say, everything worthwhile is uphill, and going uphill is always difficult. But then, until you go uphill, you'll not find the worthwhile.
Yes, absolutely. The view from top there is
Okay.
the best.
Absolutely. So, thank you, Charu, for that question, and thank you, Sunila, for that answer. We've got another question from Sharad, our audience member. How important is non-vegetarian food?
See, again, there is a lot of controversy surrounding non-vegetarian food. I really don't want to get into the technicalities of protein quality. But roughly speaking, the general concept was that the vegetarian protein is inferior to non-vegetarian protein. I will put it very simply for you. It's not the quality that is bad, it's just that it is not complete. The vegetarian protein is not as complete as the non vegetarian protein, the 9 essential amino acids that our body needs. They come in the ready form from the non vegetarian sources. However, vegetarian protein, when consumed in the correct food combinations, can be made as wholesome as non vegetarian. So it's a matter of personal choice whether you are vegetarian, non vegetarian, or you consume a mixture of two. Again, understanding the
Right.
right food combinations is very important. And either you can read up, there are lots of sites that offer genuine, correct information, or you can have an appointment with a professional who can guide you as to how to consume the protein that you are having. The second
Right.
controversy around non-vegetarian food is that it's heavy on the gut, and the liver has to work twice as hard to detox it. So I wouldn't completely agree with it, and I wouldn't completely disagree with it. So it depends on the meat that you are consuming. So far as eggs and lean meat is concerned, I think it is a very, very healthy form of complete protein that you can take. However, red meat, meat with skin on, those are the things that take longer than other food to be digested, and more effort on behalf of the body to absorb them. So if you can stay clear of red meat and meat with skin, I think it should be fine. The non-vegetarian food should not be an issue. So long as you are able to digest it, it's not causing an issue with you, either constipation or bloating. There is absolutely no problem. Again, it's very individual specific. So you have to figure out if there is an issue with you, is non-vegetarian food the cause of it? Stop it for a while, see if the situation improves. Maybe you are consuming it in the wrong way. Consult a professional who can help you analyze your food habits, suggest a few changes, so on.
Right. Right. So I think vegetarian on or non-vegetarian, the intention is to get the right nutrients that are required for your body. That is more important, right?
Yes, at this point
Absolutely.
of time, I would just like to mention when it comes to protein, people who are obsessed with consuming protein. I have had a client who was preparing; she was a pure vegetarian. So, and because she knew that proteins are essential and they are also one of the most neglected macronutrients, especially in Asian diets, she was preparing khichdi with a cup full of dal and just about 1 or 2 tablespoons of rice. So effectively, psychologically, she feels that she's having a lot of protein and very little carb, and it's going to be
Mm,
healthy.
mm,
It's not the way the body works. The excess protein that you consume is anyway going to be rejected, and it's going to put pressure on the liver for detoxifying and clearing it from the body. So,
right.
protein in what quantity it has to be consumed and what must accompany it is also equally important. You cannot change the proportion on your own and think that, oh, I'm getting more out of my food. There is a certain way
True,
to it.
true. Yeah. I think also in our Indian cuisine, there's a belief that cottage cheese is an essential component of vegetarians. So they feel that, okay, if I'm not eating other proteins, I'm getting milk protein through cottage cheese. And that is probably a misnomer that cottage cheese may not be the sufficient nutrient provider to your body.
Again, it depends on the quantity and the source of the cottage
Absolutely.
cheese. If it is sourced from organic milk, it can be a source of very good protein, but the quantity matters, the way it is prepared. It also comes along with a certain amount of fat, so you need to be watchful on that. So if you're having cottage cheese, doesn't mean that you can have a bowl full of it. So and
True.
then combining it with fiber, so it has to be clubbed with
Yeah.
vegetables, with
Yeah.
raw salad, something like that. And variety is always the key. There is no doubt that dairy is a good source of protein, be it milk, cottage cheese, yogurt, but it also has a load of other nutrients accompanying it. And when you have a variety in the diet, you tend to have a more wholesome nutrition given to your body. But when the diets become restrictive and repetitive, it becomes boring. And that is also,
Absolutely.
you're setting the stage for binge eating or maybe, shifting
Absolutely.
towards eating outside food. So if there is a
Yeah.
variety,
Yeah.
yeah, it's healthy in every way.
Correct. Correct. So, Neela, as they say, maturity comes with age, but sometimes age comes alone. That's the reason that being an adult doesn't mean that we are more wiser, isn't it? So, what I wanted to ask was that if during adolescence and as we grow into adults, if a person's food habits have been completely disoriented, can the person still get back to normalcy through reformative plans and at a later stage, or it can become a lifelong challenge?
I feel change can be incorporated. It is welcomed at any stage of life. Whenever you decide, whenever you are emotionally, mentally prepared to bring about that change, it can be incorporated. I have had clients who are, in their early adulthood, 2021. And when they switch to a healthier meal plan, there has been catch up growth. So I wouldn't like to take any names, but there was this girl, who was uh, at the other end of nutrition. There is something called anorexia nervosa, where you have so much fear of getting fat that you stop eating food. So she was extremely
Hmm.
thin, malnourished, and obviously stunted. The linear growth was not there, and the reason why she came to me was because of PCOS and menstrual disorder. So when the meal plan was changed and she was put on nutritionally sound food, there was a lot of reassurance given to her that this is not going to make her fat. And she started consuming that food. We also saw about 2.5 inches increase in her height. So the
All right.
meal, the food, the balanced food that helped her achieve the full genetic potential in terms of linear growth. And obviously, there was a lot of improvement in her menstrual health, and other issues were also taken care of. So it's never too late to bring about a change. And even if you are already
Right.
obese, you are malnourished, it can be reversed, and you will see the
Right.
effect. But you have to give it time. Nature takes time. These things are not overnight. That you do it for a month or two, and then you say, "I'm going to go back to my old self." So the body will
Right.
also go back to its old self. It's not going to
True.
retain the changes that have come. So it's not a
Yeah.
one
Yeah.
time or 2 time or a month or 6 months of change that you should be looking for. It's a lifestyle.
Right.
It's a responsibility towards the
Absolutely.
body. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you talked about an analogy in the beginning that when we used to get homework from the school, we kind of carry on until the end before the submission. I think another thing that is coming to my mind is that we are so conscious of our cars. I mean, if it is a petrol car, we'll only go and fill petrol. We'll never fill diesel or we'll never fill gas in it. But our body, which is even more precious, we'll just pour anything. We don't see what is good for it. We are conscious of the car's engine, but we don't care about the body's engine.
Very
So
true. That is so true.
yeah,
Completely agree with you.
I think yeah, but better late than never. We've got another question from Kirti Gupta. She says, you mentioned something about PCOS. What kind of a diet is recommended for to prevent this condition?
Um, in general, see, if I'm talking about prevention, the emphasis will be again on eating balanced food and having the right combination of carbs, proteins, fats, fiber, and water in your diet. However, if there is a person where the condition has already set in, then we need to take a detailed analysis of the diet that they are consuming. Invariably, what we have seen is that the girls who come with PCOD have a carb predominant diet. So what we do is, at this stage when they are still growing, we cannot stop carbs in their diet. So there has to be a reduction in the quantity of carbs that they consume, drastically reduced consumption of sugar in any form. So if it's ice creams or even the bread, most people think that it's um the fizzy drinks, the cold drinks that consume the largest amount of sugar, but it's actually the bread industry that consumes more sugar. So,
Right.
cutting down on the breads, emphasis on more whole grains. Those are the changes in brief that we try and recommend. But the more detailed changes will depend upon what the child is actually eating at that moment. So, also we
Very
start,
true.
the nuts and seeds depending on the cycle. So, you know that there are sunflower seeds, sesame seeds, uh, so those have to be given as per the menstrual cycle of the child. So when they are in the ovulatory phase, in the post-ovulatory phase, the seeds have also shown to benefit them in this condition. So but the detailed plan will actually depend on the individual case as to what they are consuming and what modifications can be realistically incorporated in their diet.
Right. So, Kirti, I hope you have your answer. Sunila, with the pandemic, we've all been seeing suddenly change our life for good or for bad. But this year has been something we were not prepared for, right? Such situations also considerably impact our mental health, raise anxiety levels, brings in fear of the unknown, and sometimes mood swings as well. So, do you see this affects our food habits too?
Absolutely. I cannot overemphasize this. I'm so thankful you brought this question up. You know why? During this pandemic, this kind of a situation has affected all of us, and we are, it has just come into the limelight. But when you look at an adolescent, they naturally go through this process of stress. uh, the development process at this age is so complex. They are going through a neurocognitive development. There is a social role transition. Along with that, there is physical development. Then there is a hormonal change going on in the body. You counteract with this peer pressure, and then the social media. All of this has so
Right,
much impact on a child that they are anyway going through the stress. Coming back to the stress impacting food habits, the human
right,
health, very holistic. It is multidimensional, and you cannot isolate one aspect of the human body from another. So, say for example, if I
true.
am stressed for any reason, I'm not able to meet my friends, I'm not able to perform well at my work, or I'm not fitting into the cool group in my college, the stress affects your appetite. Either you may stop eating, you may start binge eating, you may start indulging in the wrong kind of food, and obviously it again affects the health of the body. So for example, when children try to cut down on carbs or adults try to cut down on carbs, it is directly linked to their emotional health. You naturally become more irritable, and you're not able to, express yourselves quite as much. These are proven studies that have been carried out when specific food groups are cut down from the diet. So,
Right.
when these things happen, obviously, again, there is more stress and the vicious circle is set up. So, I cannot overemphasize how the mental state of a person affects the nutritional state of the body and the eating habits as well. So, whether it is an adolescent or an adult, it needs to be taken care of, whether it is through communication, through bonding. Specifically in adolescence, you need to, constantly boost their self-esteem, build their self-worth, make them responsible for themselves. It's very convenient for them to pin their pitfalls on someone else, that you didn't tell me this and that is why this has happened. But then you need to
True.
incorporate in them that you are growing up and you're not that much of a child anymore. So you need to be responsible for yourself, whether it is your food, the company you keep, the social accounts that you follow. Everything, total has a effect on the body and the nutritional choices that we make.
Right. 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 Absolutely agree. Dr. Sunila, it has been an extremely insightful session, and I'm sure our audience has learned a lot of new things on the right diet today. But before we let you go, we would want you to share three key valuable takeaways for our audience.
Can I just change it to 5?
Absolutely. Go ahead. It's all yours.
So, according to me, the 5 pillars of good health. One and foremost, because I'm into it, it's not the reason, it's actually the diet, right? Nowadays, they say
Sure.
abs are made in the kitchen, not in the gym. So, at any given point of time, what your body is, 80% of it depends on the food that you eat. Two is exercise. You cannot forego the importance of this. I mean, what could be holding you back from giving just 1 hour to your body each and every day? You cannot eat less and say, okay, I can let go of exercise and I can get away by not exercising. It's very important that you exercise. Number three is sleep or adequate rest. That's when your body heals itself. That's where the maximum anabolic activity goes on in your body. Unfortunately, human beings are the only species that compromise on sleep. None of the animals will ever do that. So
True.
please don't compromise on that. Figure out how much rest your body needs and give it to your body. And
Right.
fourth thing is hydration, irrespective of the season. You need to keep yourself very, very well hydrated. So many times you may mistake hunger, or you may mistake thirst for hunger. You may be thirsty for water and you may end up eating food. Again, that leads to obesity and weight gain and stuff like that. And the fifth and the most important is stress. As you mentioned about mental health, if there is any situation that is causing stress, try and ride over it, seek help, and try and stay happy as much as you can.
Right. Right. Awesome. Awesome. I absolutely loved the session today, and I really hope that our audience got some wonderful insights as well. If you have been thinking of changing your eating habits and failing repeatedly, do remember the only person holding you back is you. No more excuses. It's time to change and take your life to the next level, because you are meant to be healthy. You are meant to stay fit. You are meant to be confident and happy. And I guarantee you, the right diet will go a long way in taking you there. I thank Dr. Sunila for finding out time for us and being a part of today's episode of TLR shows and sharing such important insights. Thank you, audience, for joining us from various geographies across our social media handles. Keep following us across all our social media to stay updated with our upcoming shows and what new is happening at TLR Now. Thank you so much. You all have a great weekend ahead. Take care, stay safe, eat well, and be happy. Thank you again, Dr. Sunila. I will see you on the other side of the show. Thanks so much. Goodbye.